The process of venturing into Texas with a molding plant began with the preparation of a fairly detailed proposal for Abbotts' consideration. This was done by Dean over a period of a week or so with inputs from Dick and myself, but it included a description of obtaining a building a clean room, installing 18 molding presses over a period of time, providing a tool maintenance facility, hiring required people to operate the facility. It also included pricing estimates and a recognition of the quality requirements that we would be dealing with in providing product to Abbott Austin. Product that Abbott produced in Austin was bags, fluid bags, with a special port that allowed them to introduce drugs into the fluid that was provided to the patient's body. We presented that proposal to Abbott management in Chicago. Dick carried out that process, and we were given somewhat of a green light. Yes, they were interested, and let's take the next step forward. The next step forward was a visit to Austin by Bill DeBrule, Dick Mack, Dean, and myself. We had set up meetings with a good many of the representatives of the town of Round Rock, which was a suburb of Austin, with the economic development person for that community. And when we got there, they had even included the congressman for that district. And I don't remember the congressman's name, but I assume we could probably look it up. And we met with them. We flew down early in the morning from Greenville, South Carolina. Dean and I met Dick and Bill in Greenville, and we flew in the J.P. Stevens King Air. Bill at that point owned a portion of J.P. Stevens and had access to the airplane, so and provided a pilot and co-pilot to fly with us. We landed at the airport in Round Rock, which was not a passenger handling airport normally, but was an auxiliary airport for small planes like our situation. And went immediately to meet with the representatives of Round Rock and the EDC and the congressman. It was quite an experience. They gave us a very warm welcome, and then we began discussing the parameters of what we were going to do in Round Rock, and asking them for questions or for information and input to our project. One of the items was we were talking about perhaps buying a piece of property and having to build a building, and they kept telling us that the price of land was something like $270 or something. We couldn't figure out what that really meant. When we ultimately learned land pricing in Austin area at that time was so much per square foot. It was a little bit shocking for a couple of country boys from North Carolina, where historically land had been priced per acre, and an acre contains 43,700 or something like that square feet. So that was a bit of a mind bender. But it seemed to work out as we went along. Turned out that the EDC representative had access to a building that had apparently been a speculative building, or at any rate it was a very nice brick building, and was empty and available and for sale. I think it had on it some sort of economic development financing, and that got involved a little bit later, but it actually worked to our advantage that it had that. We took the time that afternoon to visit the building and then talked with the gentleman about the pricing and terms and all of that sort of thing over the next couple of weeks. While we were in the Austin area, we visited the Abbott plant, and turned out that Tom Brady, who was the vice president of that division of Abbott, vice president of manufacturing of that division of Abbott, was on site and gave us an opportunity to talk with him, which obviously gave Bill an opportunity to become a little bit more confident in what we were doing and what the potential was. So we spent some time, did a little tour of the Austin plant, and then flew back the next day, as I recall. So we did not spend just more than a full day there, but we did accomplish a lot of work. We began at that point. Abbott began to review the proposal, and we began to follow up. The next major event was that Dick and Dean and Roger and myself flew to Buffalo, New York, where Abbott's molding facility, their large molding facility, was located in Buffalo, New York, and we flew there to tour that and to get some good ideas about how we should configure our plant in order to be perhaps more like Abbott, but not necessarily exactly the same. We hope to make ours a little bit more modern, more automated, and certainly have a higher classification on the clean room there. Ironically, we flew to Buffalo, and again, Bill made his plane available for us, and we flew to Buffalo, visited the plant, and sometime mid-afternoon, Dean got a call that Kay had entered the hospital for delivery of their oldest daughter, Catherine. So he very quickly scheduled a commercial flight back to Greensboro, and got back to Ashburn in time for the delivery. So that was an exciting trip. Dick and Roger and I continued to visit with the Abbott folks in Buffalo for a while, and then flew back later on, I think probably the next day again. And a third trip was planned for a couple of months later. All of this had taken place like in September, October of 1989, and we continued working on it through the end of the year, and at some point did reach a pretty solid agreement with Abbott and signed a contract that at least bound us to go forward with it. We also made arrangements to buy the building. We had come up with a number we were willing to offer, and when we talked to Jim Boyles, who was the EDC person down there, he said, we told him our number, and he said, well, actually, the number was like $100,000 less. I think we actually paid $1.2 million for the building. That was because they had this binding economic development type loan on it or something of that sort that made that price available to us. And obviously we were pleased with the price going down. But pretty quickly we began to get involved in design of the clean room. Most of this work was being done by Dean. We had relieved him of the other engineering duties that he had been doing at Midstate in Seagrove. And Dale Johnson came back with the company to take on that role, and that made it pretty easy to relieve Dean, since Dale could pick up most of the engineering duties that were taking place. Sometime later, and this was probably in the spring of 1990, I don't have a date right in my mind, but we made another trip. I flew down to Round Rock and to visit the plant. It was as it was being constructed. Actually, Dean and I had made several trips, on commercial aviation to look after certain things and to get familiar and work out any details. But this trip that I'm referring to now was a trip that included Rodgen and his wife Betty Sue. I'm not sure Dick was with us on this trip, but Dean was on it, and I was on there, and it seemed there might have been someone else. Again, we used Bill's plane in order to get there, and we wound up getting to Round Rock about lunchtime and met in a cafe or a restaurant for lunch. And then we learned that night Abbott was having some sort of employee get-together, which we were invited to participate in. And the division president of the medical device business of Abbott was in town for that, so we got to meet him and several other people and began to develop relationships with the people that at Abbott and certainly at Austin. Turned out that the plant manager in Austin, as all this was going on, went through a change, and the plant manager from the Laurinburg plant wound up being the plant manager in Austin. A young man by the name of Nate Gibson, who was pretty much a hot shot, go-get-'em type of guy, was going to be the plant manager in Austin for our startup and all for a couple of years after that. Anyway, most of the time that we were operating the plant before we sold Midstate, Nate was the plant manager in Austin. At least we considered him a friend in the front office anyway.